Welcome to the psych ignition. You should have left him alone when you still had the privilege of being ignored. Because when a Sigma male decides to take revenge, it's not loud, not messy, not emotional, it's surgical. He doesn't shout. He doesn't post cryptic quotes or beg for closure. He simply vanishes into precision. And here's a psychological fact most overlook. Studies reveal that emotionally detached personalities are far more likely to execute long-term, undetectable revenge. Translation: when a Sigma male goes quiet after betrayal, he isn't healing, he's calculating. And his revenge? It doesn't even look like revenge. It looks like evolution. It looks like silence that erases you from every corner of his reality. It looks like your name never crossing his lips again, not out of hatred, but irrelevance. When an ordinary man seeks revenge, he reacts. When a Sigma male seeks revenge, he transforms. He doesn't destroy his enemies, he outgrows them so completely that they cease to exist in his world. And he doesn't do it to prove a point. He does it because he finally remembered who the hell he is. So if you've ever wondered what happens when a Sigma male strikes back without lifting a single finger, stay still. Because what's coming isn't just revenge. It's erasure with elegance. Let's get started. Number 1, he treats your name like a forgotten frequency. When a Sigma male cuts ties, your name becomes static, a sound he no longer hears, a word stripped of meaning. He doesn't mention you. Not out of spite, but because your relevance expired. You're not an enemy. Not a chapter. Not even a mistake worth remembering. You're simply deleted. To him, you're an irrelevant scene edited out of a masterpiece, removed not out of emotion, but optimization. And soon, people begin to notice. They ask about you. They drop your name into conversation, waiting for a flicker, a reaction. But there's nothing, maybe a faint shift in tone, a subtle glance, and then he pivots effortlessly, as if your existence was background noise in a film he's already outgrown. That's not avoidance. That's psychological control. Because silence from a Sigma male doesn't mean he forgot, it means he decided you no longer belong in his mental architecture. See, hate still implies you matter. Indifference means you've been archived. When a Sigma deletes you from his emotional system, he doesn't need closure. He doesn't need justice. He just rewrites his story until you no longer fit in the narrative. And that's the kind of revenge that doesn't just hurt. It erases. You'll search his world for proof you existed, but all you'll find is upgraded silence. No scar. No bitterness. Just clean precision, the kind that leaves nothing behind but peace. Because for the Sigma male, the highest form of revenge isn't destruction. It's detachment. Number 2, he turns the wound into a weapon, and the weapon into wisdom. Pain is supposed to break people. But not him. Not the Sigma male. When he's betrayed, he doesn't spiral into chaos or drown in self-pity. He retreats, not to escape the pain, but to study it. To extract data from it. Because to a Sigma, every wound is information, every heartbreak a lesson in human nature. While most people crumble under emotion, he dissects his own suffering like a surgeon. He observes the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, not to dwell on them, but to understand the anatomy of weakness. And slowly, what was meant to destroy him becomes the very thing that refines him. He doesn't heal, he evolves. He rewires his instincts. Rebuilds his logic. Strengthens his filters. Every scar becomes an internal upgrade. Every disappointment, a recalibration of his emotional intelligence. That's the Sigma paradox, his pain doesn't make him fragile, it makes him precise. You thought you wounded him. But what you really did was sharpen his awareness. And here's the psychological twist. He no longer trusts like he used to, but not out of fear. Out of understanding. He can now read manipulation in tone, detect deceit in silence, and sense disloyalty in patterns. He no longer seeks revenge through reaction, he becomes the kind of man no one can deceive again. People often say time heals all wounds. But for the Sigma, time doesn't heal, it forges. By the time you realize how deeply he's transformed, it's too late. Because the version of him that once tolerated your chaos no longer exists. And that's his silent vengeance. He doesn't rise to get even, he rises to get beyond. His success, his clarity, his emotional armor, they all become proof that you never broke him. You built him. And that's the cruel irony. You didn't just lose him. You became the reason he'll never lose again. Number 3, he lets you think you won, until you realize you lost everything. When the Sigma male walks away, he doesn't slam doors. He doesn't argue. He simply becomes still. Silent. Unreadable. And that silence? It's a strategy disguised as surrender. While most people rush to defend their pride, the Sigma stays motionless, observing. He watches the way you move, the way you celebrate his absence, the way your ego feeds on the illusion of victory. And that's exactly what he wants, for you to think you've won. Because a Sigma never reacts in the moment. He studies. He collects data. He observes patterns you don't even know you're revealing. He lets the storm pass while you dance in your false sense of triumph, unaware that every move you make is exposing your next weakness. Psychologically, it's genius. Ego-driven minds reveal themselves the moment they believe the battle is over. And that's when he learns everything he needs to know, not out of vengeance, but mastery. He's not planning a counterattack. He's architecting your collapse. See, while you're busy reliving the drama, he's already recalibrated. He's not chasing justice, he's setting the stage for consequences. Not through aggression, but through natural law, letting your own actions turn against you. It's not magic. It's mathematics. Every lie loses traction. Every manipulation unravels. Your social circle begins to shift, your credibility begins to fade, and you can't trace it back to him. Because he didn't lift a finger. He didn't need to. The Sigma's revenge is environmental. He builds a reality where your own energy collapses under its weight. No confrontation. No closure. Just a quiet symmetry between what you did and what returns to you. By the time the silence grows heavy, he's already gone, thriving, detached, untouchable. And you? You're left standing in the ruins of your own illusion, realizing that while you were busy trying to win, he was busy ending the game. That's the kind of revenge no one recovers from. Because it doesn't break your heart. It breaks your perception of control. Number 4, he becomes what you can't compete with. When most people are hurt, they chase replacements. A new lover, a rebound, a distraction. But the Sigma male? He replaces himself. He doesn't search for validation in someone new. He reconstructs the version of himself that tolerated disrespect, that explained too much, that stayed too long. He doesn't look outward, he turns inward. And that's what makes his transformation terrifyingly powerful. Because while others try to make a point, he's busy making progress. He becomes sharper, quieter, and impossible to read. Every wound becomes a blueprint. Every lesson becomes armor. His life starts to operate at a frequency that ego-driven minds can't tune into. He's not glowing up for attention, he's evolving out of reach. He stops reacting, stops explaining, stops proving. He's no longer driven by emotion, but by clarity. And when clarity takes over, chaos no longer has access. That's when the tables turn. You start to notice it first in his energy. The calm that used to be patience now feels like power. The silence that once seemed cold now feels like command. He walks differently. Speaks differently. It's as if he's mastered the art of being both visible and unreachable. And here's the sting. He doesn't do it to make you jealous. He does it because he's finally become someone who doesn't need to look back. While you're still replaying the past, he's living in a dimension built from discipline and distance. You can't compete with him anymore, not because he's trying to win, but because he's stopped playing altogether. That's the cruel beauty of the Sigma's evolution. He doesn't outshine you to hurt you. He rises so quietly, so consistently, that comparison itself becomes pointless. You don't just lose him. You lose the version of yourself that thought you ever stood a chance beside him. He is no longer seeking revenge. He is the revenge. A living reminder that silence, discipline, and self-mastery will always outlast noise. Number 5, he manipulates the game without ever touching the board. Power doesn't always come from movement. Sometimes it comes from stillness, the kind of stillness that unnerves people who rely on chaos. The Sigma male understands this instinctively. He doesn't need to argue, force, or prove anything. He knows that real control is not about what you say, but about what you can make others reveal when you say nothing. Most people play the game by moving their pieces. Talking, reacting, overexposing their thoughts. But the Sigma? He plays by watching the board rearrange itself. You think he's passive, detached, uninterested. But in truth, he's 3 steps ahead, studying cause and effect, mapping patterns like a chess grandmaster who's memorized your entire strategy before you even make your move. He understands human psychology at its core. That emotion is the ultimate weakness. Anger, jealousy, insecurity, they all make people predictable. So while others are busy chasing validation, the Sigma uses patience as a weapon. He triggers reactions without confrontation. He reveals truths without interrogation. He dismantles egos simply by refusing to feed them. Because nothing terrifies a manipulator more than a man they can't manipulate back. Nothing frustrates an egotist more than a man who won't compete. By staying calm, he forces others to expose themselves. By remaining silent, he controls the narrative. And when he finally moves, it's surgical, precise, and irreversible. You'll never see him plot or argue. But you'll feel the shift when the balance of power changes, quietly, cleanly, permanently. That's the Sigma's brilliance. He doesn't play to win. He plays to rewrite the rules. And by the time you realize the board was his all along, you've already become a piece in his strategy. A pawn that mistook his silence for surrender. He never fought you. He just watched you defeat yourself. Number 6, he's addicted to solitude because it's where he becomes dangerous. Most people fear being alone. They crave noise, messages, validation, attention, anything to escape the sound of their own mind. But the Sigma male? He doesn't run from silence. He runs to it. Because in solitude, he finds the one thing the world can't give him, clarity. When he disappears, it's not isolation. It's incubation. He retreats into silence the way a warrior retreats to sharpen his blade, not to hide, but to prepare. And here's the part most won't understand. Solitude isn't loneliness for him. It's strategy. It's where he studies his patterns, kills his weaknesses, and evolves into something even he didn't know he could become. While others are performing for attention, he's building systems that make attention irrelevant. He learns, he plans, he reinvents. He becomes his own companion, his own critic, his own motivator. Because when you master the art of being alone, no one can use loneliness against you. That's where his danger lies, in his self-sufficiency. He doesn't need company to feel complete. He doesn't chase distraction to feel alive. He's fueled by purpose, not presence. And when he reemerges from solitude, he's not the same man who walked in. His silence has turned into focus. His detachment has turned into discipline. His solitude has turned into strength. People notice the difference but can't explain it. They say he's changed, colder, more calculated, more distant. But that's not detachment. That's evolution. He's not avoiding the world, he's simply refusing to be controlled by it. He's learned that peace is the ultimate form of power, and silence the purest form of strategy. Because in a world addicted to noise, the man who can sit in silence and enjoy it becomes the one everyone secretly fears. That's the Sigma paradox. He doesn't need solitude to escape people. He needs it to surpass them. Number 7, he observes everything but reveals nothing. The Sigma male is a ghost in plain sight. He's there, quiet, still, unassuming, but his mind never stops recording. He doesn't just listen to what people say. He listens to what they avoid saying. He reads between sentences, between gestures, between micro-expressions that most never notice. He studies tone, rhythm, energy. He watches how people change when they're nervous, when they lie, when they're around power. Every detail becomes data. Every interaction, an analysis. While others speak to be heard, he watches to understand. Because information is control, and the Sigma never gives control away. He's not paranoid. He's prepared. He knows that people reveal their intentions long before they reveal their actions. So, he lets them talk. He lets them think he's disinterested, distracted, or detached. But make no mistake, he's recording everything. Every inconsistency. Every shift in tone. Every pattern that doesn't align. That's why he always seems one step ahead. Because he doesn't react to words, he reacts to truth. And here's where it gets unsettling. You'll never know what he's thinking. You'll never know what he's planning. Because while you're busy trying to figure him out, he's already figured you out. He doesn't expose his emotions, opinions, or vulnerabilities. Not because he's hiding, but because he knows the world weaponizes transparency. So he gives people just enough to feel comfortable, and nothing more. That's his quiet genius. He controls outcomes not by dominating, but by understanding the battlefield better than anyone else. He lets others underestimate him, misread him, and assume he's passive. Because that's when they make their mistakes. He's not playing defense or offense. He's playing observation. And in the long run, the observer always wins. Because power doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one who sees without being seen. That's the Sigma's secret. He knows that knowledge is leverage. And silence is camouflage. Number 8, he walks away without warning, and that's his loudest message. Most people make an announcement when they're done. They argue, they explain, they justify. They want closure, a final scene to prove their point. But the Sigma male doesn't believe in that. He doesn't believe in performing endings. When he's done, he simply vanishes. No warnings. No explanations. No theatrics. Just silence, clean, final, and absolute. Because for him, leaving isn't about pride or power. It's about peace. When something no longer aligns with his purpose, he doesn't fix it, he exits. Quietly. Efficiently. Without emotion. And that silence, that absence, it speaks volumes. People notice it too late. They replay every conversation, every argument, every ignored sign. Trying to understand how someone could detach so completely. But that's the thing, the Sigma doesn't detach overnight. He detaches in phases, slowly, internally, until one day, there's simply nothing left to hold on to. His silence becomes your punishment. His absence becomes your mirror. Because when he leaves, he doesn't take revenge, he takes his energy. And that's what you really miss, not his presence, but the balance his presence created. See, most people stay for closure. The Sigma leaves for clarity. He doesn't need to be understood, he just needs to be free. And here's the sting. You never get to say goodbye. Because he already said it 1,000 times in his mind while you weren't listening. His quiet exit is his final act of self-respect. No words, no guilt, no second chances. He doesn't destroy bridges, he simply stops crossing them. And when he disappears, the silence he leaves behind becomes the loudest thing you'll ever hear. Because you don't realize how much he stabilized your chaos. Until the day his calm is no longer there to absorb it. That's his power. He doesn't end relationships. He ends access. And once the Sigma is gone, you don't get him back. You only get the memory of what it felt like to be in his presence. Number 9, he never seeks validation, and that's what makes him magnetic. The world is addicted to approval. People broadcast their lives, their opinions, their every move, hoping for likes, applause, or acknowledgement. Validation has become the new drug, and most are hopelessly hooked. But the Sigma male? He's immune to it. He doesn't need validation because he already operates from a deeper source, self-approval. He doesn't measure his worth by reactions, attention, or recognition. He measures it by alignment, by how closely his actions match his principles. That's what makes him magnetic. Because confidence without an audience is rare. And independence in a world of performers feels like rebellion. People can sense it, that grounded, quiet certainty in his presence. He doesn't brag, yet his aura speaks louder than words. He doesn't try to impress, yet his detachment intrigues everyone around him. He doesn't chase the spotlight because he understands something most never do. Attention fades, but authenticity compounds. And when you're not chasing attention, you move differently. You speak when it matters. You act without hesitation. You become the calm in every room full of noise. Ironically, that's what pulls people toward him. Because humans are drawn to what they can't control. And the Sigma's indifference feels like power. They want to understand him, impress him, decode him. But you can't impress someone who isn't looking. You can't manipulate someone who doesn't crave approval. You can't control someone who's already free. His self-reliance creates gravity. A force that draws people in, not through charm, but through discipline. He doesn't beg to be seen, the world notices him anyway. Because when you no longer need validation, you start living by truth, not by trend. You stop seeking acceptance and start commanding respect. And the Sigma knows. The most powerful man in the room is the one who could have attention, but doesn't need it. That's not arrogance. That's mastery. Number 10, he intimidates not by aggression, but by presence. Some men dominate a room by being loud. They flex, they posture, they demand attention. But the Sigma male doesn't need volume to be heard. He doesn't need movement to be noticed. He walks in, and the atmosphere shifts, quietly, unexplainably. Not because he's trying to be seen, but because he's unaffected by the need to be. There's something unsettling about a man who doesn't crave acknowledgement. Who doesn't seek validation, permission, or belonging. In a world built on approval, his self-containment feels like rebellion. And that rebellion feels like power. People sense it immediately. They can't define it, but they feel it. That calm, heavy silence that carries more weight than 1,000 words. He looks people in the eye, not to challenge them, but to remind them he's not afraid. His gaze doesn't search for weakness, it exposes it. Because those who rely on appearances crumble in front of someone who doesn't play their game. He never rushes to speak, never explains too much. His words are deliberate, measured, like a blade drawn only when necessary. That's what intimidates people, not what he says, but what he chooses not to say. They mistake his calm for coldness, his silence for judgment, his detachment for superiority. But the truth is simpler, he just doesn't need to prove anything. And nothing is more unsettling than a man who has nothing to prove. Because aggression is predictable. Silence is not. Aggression shows intent. Silence hides capability. The Sigma knows that control isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering himself. His energy stays steady while everyone else's fluctuates. That's why people feel uneasy around him. They can't read him, can't provoke him, can't shake his balance. His calmness is his weapon. His presence is his power. Because true strength doesn't announce itself. It just arrives. And the room adjusts. Number 11, he's loyal to very few, and that's what makes his loyalty unbreakable. The Sigma male doesn't scatter his energy across 100 people. He doesn't need followers, fans, or approval. He gives loyalty sparingly, to those who deserve it. And that's what makes it priceless. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't announce it. He doesn't measure it in posts, messages, or gestures. He simply remains consistent. People notice this, even if they don't immediately understand it. They notice that he doesn't gossip, doesn't dramatize, doesn't manipulate. He shows up the same way every day, steady, grounded, disciplined. And in a world of chaos, inconsistency, and shallow bonds, his presence exposes the truth about everyone else. Those who once tried to deceive him, control him, or gaslight him, they begin to unravel. Not because he confronts them, but because his energy quietly highlights the contrast between authenticity and pretense. He doesn't need to convince anyone. He doesn't need to defend himself. The world simply adjusts. People's illusions collapse without a single word from him. That's the paradox. By being loyal only to what deserves it, he becomes untouchable. His allies know his worth, his enemies see the gap they can never cross. He doesn't manipulate. He reflects. He doesn't attack. He outlasts. And he doesn't gossip. He observes. People naturally align or fall away. His silence does the work that drama never could. And that is the quiet form of influence the Sigma wields. Loyalty measured, presence undeniable, and energy unshakable. Because the Sigma doesn't need to fight for respect. He cultivates it. And it grows silently around him. Number 12, he doesn't need karma, he becomes it. The Sigma male doesn't sit around waiting for the universe to balance the scales. He doesn't hope someone else will deliver justice. He doesn't plan revenge in the traditional sense. Because he knows something most never learn. The strongest power is in evolution, not retaliation. He grows. He thrives. He detaches so completely that your existence no longer touches him. Your betrayals, your manipulations, your attempts to hurt him, they become irrelevant, background noise to a life he's building without you. And that's where the true punishment lies. Not in your suffering. Not in your humiliation. But in your absence from his world. He doesn't curse you. He doesn't yell. He doesn't call you out. He just becomes better, smarter, calmer, stronger, untouchable. Every step he takes, every move he makes, is a testament to the life you failed to value. And in that quiet, unstoppable ascent, he becomes the living embodiment of balance. The irony? The more he thrives, the more it highlights what you lost. What you will never regain. What you never deserved in the first place. He is the storm and the calm. The consequence and the evolution. The lesson and the liberation. You thought karma would arrive with noise, with poetry, with delay. But the Sigma doesn't wait for karma. He is karma. And that is the ultimate haunting. To witness someone rise, detached, powerful, and unbroken. While you remain trapped in the echoes of your own choices. He doesn't need revenge. His existence is justice. His peace is punishment. His growth is the closure you'll never receive. And in that silence, that unshakable, undeniable presence, you finally understand, the Sigma male doesn't just move on. He moves beyond you entirely. He doesn't need to yell. He doesn't need to curse. He doesn't need closure. He becomes the storm, the consequence, the karma, all without ever lifting a finger. You may have tried to hurt him, tried to control him, or sought validation from him. But in the end, the Sigma's growth is unstoppable. His silence becomes louder than any argument. His presence becomes undeniable. And his peace becomes the punishment. Because a Sigma male doesn't take revenge. He becomes the justice. He becomes the closure. He becomes something you'll never touch, never control, and never truly understand. Remember this, the stronger he becomes, the more your illusions crumble. And that is the haunting power of a true Sigma. If this video hit deep, make sure to like, comment, and share your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss what most people aren't brave enough to say. And is there someone you think needs to see this video, share it with them. Thank you for watching.